Kyle here from allmediareviews.blogspot.com. Here to sort of follow up, wrap up in some ways, but some ways not actually. The modern progressive art rock artists, art rock music lists. When I did the long, bloated, 13 video series countdown of the albums. So this is going to be the artists, which I'm just going to probably just do this in one. But now thinking about it actually, and thinking about I've been doing a lot of songs lists. I just did a list for 1976, which I should do more of those song list videos as well. I could do some kind of definitive, very challenging definitive list of songs for this too. So it's not the last video, but it might be the last video for a while. I don't know. Anyway, inevitably a lot of these artists will have songs in other lists. Because you like to make lists, and lists show up, songs and things, items show up on more than one list. Anyway, so this is it. This is a little bit of rehash. I published this actually in the blog, allmediareviews.blogspot.com, just a few days ago. So let me just kind of skim down here. There's a lot of honorable mentions. I just did it. Here's the top 50. Yeah, 50. So, and this list is not 100% based on like mirroring the other list. It's really more a combination of, I think, of these artists, art bands. They may have one definitive album or may have a handful of albums, and also factoring in things like influence a little bit, but even more so like how were they as a live act, that kind of thing. So, and I did see them live anyway. How much did I like them compared to others? So anyway, so Amanda Palmer with her Grand Theft or whatever, and she had different names for her bands. Number 50, those two albums especially, the Grand Theft Orchestra, Theater is Evil, and Who Killed Amanda Palmer are both awesome. Number 49, Time of Orchids. You have this. I tried to find as many artist band logos, but couldn't for Time of Orchids. But Sarcast Wild, but they have Namesake, Caution. Their whole catalog is pretty good, but those last two records were the ones that really stick out, and why they ended up a little higher than some artists, because those two records are really strong. Anyway, number 49. Number 48, Doves. Well, my go-to is the debut album, which ended up on that 200 album list. They don't have a bad record. I mean, Some Cities is the only kind of weak record, but Kingdom of Us is quite good, and The Last Broadcast, and then the last record that came out, I think 2020, I'm spacing on the name, is quite good as well. So yeah, Doves, number 48, one of my favorites on this list in the top 50. Fris McGee, they're definitely a band that's spotty, but the best stuff holds up. Now you could say, well, also they're the strength of as a band they are as a live act, which ironically I liked them initially as a live band, and I liked the fact that when they would do some covers, however, they just became guilty of a lot of jam band cliches that I found myself getting bored at their shows. By comparison, not all their studio albums are great, but the ones that are good tend to be really good. Mantis is really good. Anchor Drops is also really good. Similar Skin is pretty decent, and the newest one, which again it was on my list and I can't remember something to this. I forget what the name of it. I could just scroll. Actually, it's not on my blog here, but anyway, so that's kind of why it's not on the strength of their live prowess necessarily. They have some other albums that I haven't even listened to, like their first album I never really listened to. Safety in Numbers has some moments. They have a lot of other records. Death by Stereo were more spotty, but on the strength of at least, I'd say 3 to 4 really good studio albums, they go in the top 50. Ironically, So anyway, number 47. Number 46. Kasika, the Japanese post-math rock dreamy rock band. They only have the 2 albums, Mosaic and the self-titled, which are both really good. They have a remixed album, which I kind of like too. But yeah, they're on the strength of basically having just basically a flawless catalog, even though it's short, they go this high. Number 46. Japanese is Kasika. Number 45, Janelle Monae. Probably would have ended up a fair amount higher. I got to be careful when I'm showing. Than here at 45 a few years back, because I was really loving her. the first two releases. Audition, I don't really count. I haven't listened to that in a long time because it's really just a demo. I also think she had worked with the Outcast guys at one point, but really you take those first two releases, and the Electric Lay is quite good too, but that EP is awesome, and Arcandroid's a terrific record from that year 2010 and of the last decade, the 2010s. Dirty Computer, I don't despise it, but it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's not as sort of psychedelic or theatrical, even though it's sort of still in a story format, but it's more overtly political and lyrical. The lyrics kind of overshadow some of the music to me, but anyway, and she's released some singles I have liked besides the those albums I was thinking about. Yoga, for example, I do like. A lot of people didn't like Yoga, but anyway, Janelle Monae, number 45. Number 44, Bentley. Like Janelle, at one time I probably had them a little bit higher, and we probably might have fallen a little bit higher. Not that much, but a little bit. But they had that run from Shiny Eyed Babies through Land Animal. Those three records are all really good. Shiny Eyed Babies probably being the best. But their last two albums have not done as much for me, especially the last one. I'm not really into hyperpop, wherever it's called. But, and you had two members leave, including Ben Levin, which we'll see what happens after this. But, the bass player, I think it was Jessica, also left. So, understandable. We'll see. I guess if they had left right after Land Animal, I might have been a little less... I would have been a little more down about that, but I don't know. We'll see. Sometimes bands like Mute Math loses a key member and it doesn't really faze them, so we'll see. But they're at number 44, Bentley. Number 43, Long Distance Calling. Avoid the Light and Trips are the two really key signature records for me, but they don't have any records I don't like. The other catalog, the rest of their catalog is sort of hit and miss, but on the strength of those two albums alone, they belong in the top 50. Great. So progressive post-rock band, heavy progressive post-rock band from Germany, I believe. Anyway, number 43. Number 42, Clan Zoo. Like a few of these different bands on this, just for the strength of a couple records, and that those two records are excellent. They don't have any bad records. They go on this list. Top 50. Those two records, Rua and Black Coats and Bandages, are both awesome. I enjoy both of those really a ton, and so that's why they end up going here. Post rock, while alt western with violin at points, and the vocals of Declan DeBarra make them very distinct in a lot of ways. Number 42, Clan Zoo. Number 41. It's Silverchair / the Disassociatives, the three Daniel Johns releases in the 2000s, really. They're all good. I've come to conclude the last Silverchair record, Young Modern, is the best of the three. I love Disassociatives a lot, too. And Diorama, I still enjoy. So, it's not, you include the whole Silverchair catalog, I wouldn't put them this high, but I just I see them as a reinvented artist band, really, in the 2000s in a lot of ways. If you include the stuff that came after Young Modern, again, that hasn't really done it. The Dreams Band and then his solo album, Daniel. Unfortunately, not so much. Although he did appear on, I believe it was on Kimbra's album, and then Kimbra, I don't know, he did that orchestral thing. That was interesting, but anyway. Number 41, Silverchair / the Disassociatives from the 2000s. I should add that part. Number 40, Warpaint. A band that has pretty close to a flawless catalog. The debut album, The Fool, and the debut EP, a little bit like Janelle Monae, are the strongest. But the self-titled I still have to go back to. That was the one disappointment in their whole release. They had a couple EPs, and of course they had the last two albums, Heads Up and Radiate Like This. I like both a lot, especially the new one. I'm really enjoying more and more. I could do a ranking at some point for their records. They have whatever that is, 5 records. At this point, not really weird to say that the self-title would be at the bottom, but I don't know, I'd give it another go and see if maybe I'd feel differently. But yeah, dreamy post, female-led post-rock of a sort, mathy post-rock, psychedelic post-rock. Love them, Warpaint. and their catalog number 4. And a great live band too, mesmerizing. I saw them with School of Seven Bells and some other bands. They're great. Anyway, number 39, like Kasika, only had 2 albums as Japanese band led by a female singer. This is crazy, fast, intricate classical musical arrangements, like modern classical with post-rock, prog, and a little bit of hardcore at points. It's like I'm thinking of the second album, Ilia. The first album I haven't listened to in a long time, but I remember enjoying that album quite a lot as well. It was similar, but it wasn't as polished. Mutt Yumu, and it's weird how Mutt Yumu and Kasika had like mirroring careers, a little like Kevin Gilbert and Jeff Buckley. And they're really good. Both of their releases are good, and then they ran into reality of trying to make music and whatever, life happening. So anyway, number 39, Mutt Yumu from Japan. Number 38, Team Me, with their comeback record. It boosts them up a little bit too as they came back into reunion this past year. Something in the making, but their other 2 records are both just terrific, energetic, dream pop, progressive in a lot of ways. Blind as Night and To the Treetops. Those gang vocals are so great. The energy is it's infectious. So Team Me definitely belong on this list. I mean, in some ways they've kind of filled a little bit of a void for Mew fans. I mean, even though they've sort of released music while Mew was active, Mew hasn't been as prolific since they came on the scene, which is weird. It's a little bit like Porcupine Tree and Anathema. Anyway, number 38, Team Me. Number 37, Local Natives. Another band with basically a flawless catalog. Varying degrees of appreciation and how much of. But I go back to Gorilla Manor still. But all the records are good. Hummingbird, Sunlit Youth. I need to do a revisit. In the last one, Violet Street, I remember loving a lot back in, it was 2019? I think it was 2019. Anyway, number 37, Local Natives. Great vocal harmonies. I love that. Great drum percussion moments. Number 36, Manma. I love the band. The Three-Headed Monster, including Brent Knopf's work. I mean, it's, I Am the Flaming Monster is a perfect record to me. Friend and Foe has a lot of really good songs, including probably their best song. Their last 2 records, Moms, after Brent had left, I still enjoy. It's a little more electronic, and 2010's Minds is also terrific. And they're a really good live band. I got to see them a couple times, once with Brent, thankfully. So anyway, and a lot of these bands are great live that I've seen, Local Natives included, the drum jams being a big part of that. Never seen Team Me live, unfortunately. Anyway, number 36, Manma. Number 35, Kimbra. She's got a very good catalog, although you could say that her first record was her best, and her second record is pretty damn good. The last record, Primal Heart, I liked, but I didn't like as much. I like her live shows. She's got a lot of those sort of remix versions of songs, too, that I really appreciate. The Sing Sing Studios, on the first record, there were like 4 tracks that were just great. She did them by herself. She did the Two-Way Street vocal solo and included. And, of course, she did a remixes of some of the songs off Primal Heart. Now, she's got another new album coming out literally in a few weeks, like a month from now, called Reawakenings or something like, not Reawakenings. Anyway, we'll see how it compares. She's going pretty far off the deep end, so we'll see. And the truth is, if Primal Heart was, if I would have enjoyed it more, if I enjoyed it as much as the reimagined EP, I probably would have put her a little higher than this. But that being said, it's still being number 35 on this list still says something for her. Vows is a classic. I'll never tire of that record. So anyway, number 35, Kimbra. Number 34, Major Parkinson. On the strength of, and I still have yet to really spend time with their first album, but their last 3 records especially. The second record I've listened to a little bit. They're pretty consistent. Very, always interesting. Very, I'd say original sounding is the best way to put it. The singer's very original sounding. They're prog rock in a different way, but they're not too out there. They're sort of the right medium of being experimental, but not being too weird. I mean, it's like they're taking some of the, like, a little bit like XTC in that sense. XTC gets weird at points, but they don't get too weird. Whereas opposed to, like, Cardiacs sometimes go too far off the deep end for me. They're probably pretty strongly influenced by Cardiacs, though. But yeah, their new record is great. Twilight Cinema is still my favorite. Black Box I still like a lot. A lot of people love that album. So anyway, Major Parkinson, number 34. And, the live albums they've done, too, are really good. Number 33, Archive, who have a pretty extensive catalog. Largely on the strength of a few records, I put them this high. You All Look the Same to Me from 2002. 2009's Controlling Crowds. And then I would put, like, a few of the other more cinematic records, including the newest one called The Arms and Angels, Axiom. They have a lot of records. That's probably their both strength and weakness. Noise is another one that's from the 2000s that I've always enjoyed. It's got a song called FU and everything like that, which always sticks out to me. But they have an album called Lights, which was the first album I got into them, and I still like that. I haven't listened to that in ages though. So they have a lot of quantity, but they're like Fris McGee, and they're maybe slightly more consistent than Fris McGee, but their best records are really good. So anyway, the Pink Floyd and the trip hop elements, especially. 33, Archive. Number 32, Coheed and Cambria. Like Archive, like Fris McGee, largely on the strength of a few records being really strong. Good Apollo 1, first and foremost. This is just an absolute epic masterpiece. Then In Keeping Secrets, the record that came before that, is not as good, but it's pretty close in some ways. And then I would put maybe both the Vaxxus records on there, especially the new one. And they have some other songs I enjoy. I have issues with some of the others, but they're a pretty good live band, although, I don't go to see just them. They've come here many times I didn't go. So, a few years back they would have been higher, but, on the strength of those specific records, they go this high, number 32. 31, Everything, like Bent Knee, or some of these other bands coming up, they have a very consistent catalog. Their newest album might be my least favorite, actually, Raw Data Field. Yeah, I like it. Their second album, Arc, is the only record that I kind of don't care very much for. I felt like they were just still learning what worked and what didn't work. The first record, though, Man Alive, I really enjoy. Even though the vocals are hard to understand in it. They're doing a kind of a yes thing where singing the way it sounds as opposed to what it sounds like or trying to understand. But Get to Heaven, Get to Heaven and the two albums that came after, which I'm spacing on. Those three, that three, Reanimator is one of them. But the one after Get to Heaven was almost. I mean, they've got like 4 really good albums and a couple albums that are sort of spotty, you could say. I mean, the new album is still decent. So, I mean, on the strength of consistency, they belong on this. They're experimental, kind of poppy math rock band of sorts, that really stick out in a lot of ways. Their vocals have really grown to be good. They don't overstay their welcome in most cases. Some of their albums are a little bit long, but they always, end up batting a pretty good percentage, even on the records that go like 13, 14, 15 tracks long anyway. Number 31, Everything. I only saw them live once and I enjoyed them. Open for, I can't remember the name of the band. Joy Formidable, I think it was. Yeah. The Mars Volta, number 30. This is supposed to say the sacrilege for the style, because the kind of the signature band in a lot of ways. I love the stuff that is awesome, and the stuff that isn't so great, I just kind of, like Bedlam and Goliath, I can't stand the production on. The songwriting is actually pretty good on, but that just kills my interest. Ambitexture, I need to give that another re-listen because it's been a long time. But when I tried to get into that album, I liked a lot of it, but a lot of it kind of meandered too much for me. It's like listening to The Ancient from Yes more than one time. But half of it I think I remember enjoying. But the strength of Francis the Mute, which is an epic masterpiece in a lot of ways. I love all the segues and the build-ups work in that. And Delouse in the Comatorium lives up to its hype. Is a fantastic debut album. And then I actually would put down Nocturnicate and Octahedron sort of next. I enjoyed parts of both of those records. Nocturnicate I really liked. I don't know, people hated it. They thought the production sounded weird. The new record, unfortunately, it just isn't really working for me. It just doesn't sound, it's not the kind of Mars Volta music I really want. So that's kind of why they're in the mix. And I've seen them live. I saw them like 3 times. One time it was all noise. Another time it was very clean and really like out there. Like you had Flea doing this flute solo and all this stuff. So they're kind of hit and miss. I mean, overall they are a pretty interesting live band. So they kind of fall this part for that reason. They're really great and then sometimes not so great. But overall, they're still a band that I do enjoy a lot. Number 29, Fiakra. Well, it's sort of sacrilege because Fiakra's catalog is so limited. It's so damn good, even as limited as it is. Fiakra, the band / guy, it goes at this point. The Thought Steps EP is unbelievably good, including the bonus tracks. The previous EP he had released with Spread the Sweat and a couple of other songs. Old Time Nook. And then, the subsequent EPs / singles, from Koi to Sugar Life. I think it's Sugar. I'm thinking of the 3 song. Anyway, I mean, the guy hasn't released any bad music at all. The guy / band. It's just there's been very little music. But I think if we had even one full-length record that was really good, they would go up at least 10 spots. But as it is, 29 is pretty good for a band that we may never even hear from again. I don't know. Hopefully we will. Annie B. He's playing with Annie BEA. He's in her band, basically. So they've kind of flip-flopped. She was in his band or whatever, and I don't know. Anyway, number 29, Fiakra. Number 28, Imogen Heap, kind of / Frou Frou. On the strength of... The Frou Frou record is good, but on the strength of a couple records, Sparks and especially Speak for Yourself. I like parts of Ellipse, of course, but she's a savant. She's a master at manipulating technology and vocal effects and electronics with pop music. Her debut album isn't even as interesting, even though stylistically it's almost like Alanis Morissette, I Megaphone. With more prolificness, she could be higher potentially. I've never seen her live, but of course I've seen live videos, and she's really good live too. So she gets points for that too, and the Frou Frou stuff. So Imogen Heap / Frou Frou, number 28. Number 27, on the strength again of 2 albums only, sadly, in an EP, House of Fools. Both of them are really good, especially the debut album, Live and Learn. Sort of psychedelic, bluesy, southern, progressive folk rock, art rock, whatever you want to call it. I love that album. The follow-up is really good, including Need to Be Free, although in fairness, the demo of Need to Be Free I love even more. But House of Fools, a totally highly unknown band, the use of piano, the sort of Queen moments at points, and the dynamics, the lyrics. There's a lot of things I just love about those 2 records. You could be on this list and only have a few records because those 2 records are good enough. Anyway, number 27, House of Fools. Number 26, The Family Crest, another band that has a pretty consistent catalog. The Village is a decent record as a debut album, but starting from Beneath the Brine and the Axe albums have all been really good. Chamber rock of a sort, a lot of dynamics. Liam's a great vocalist. I've seen them live, and they're really fun live. They have tons and tons of extra instrumentation at points on their records. Family Crest are fantastic. Number 26. Number 25, Anathello, continuing with the chamber rock, and Family Crest owe something to Anathello in a lot of ways. The Anathello were a very consistent band. My go-tos are probably their last 2 records, first and foremost, Canopy Glow and especially Floating World, aside from the fact the whole swallowing of the mic a little bit, Matt does. But their debut album, too, goes up there, even though it's stylistically a fair amount different. Luminescence in the Atlas Position. Then you have Holiday at Sea, and you have Sparrows, I believe it's called. Sparrow, maybe? And they had a couple of EPs. I have the Anthology, which has a lot of that extra music. We're a very consistent band. The use of drums and clapping and horns, very creative, very dreamy, fun band, Anathello. Unfortunately, really highly unknown. Which the name Anathello, I guess, has got a Japanese reference, which understands why a lot of the songs on Floating World, that album there, have a Japanese naming, and why they did a tour in Japan, I believe. So they got those bootlegs and stuff. Anyway, number 24 on the strength of only 2 albums and then like one other single. The Receiving End of Sirens, Casey Crescenzo's first band before he went off to do the Deer Hunter full time. 2 epic sort of progressive post-hardcore band with gang vocals at points, dreamy moments, a lot of just extra catchy moments, ethereal moments, guitar textures and riffs at points pretty heavy. There's just a ton going on with layering on both their records. Love both their records. Again, a lot of this list is bands that have only a couple records, 2, 3, 4 band/artists. But it's about quality sometimes over quantity. As opposed to some of the bands like Fris McGee and like Archive, even to an extent where you have a few standout records. But in the case of like Receiving Under Sirens and a few other bands like that, they just had a couple just excellent, just awesome records that are favorites that they belong on this list at 24. Making our way down the list, number 23, Anathema. And I'm talking about really the 2010s Anathema, the 2000s and the 90s, the sort of doom metal stuff. Doesn't really, I know some of the records that led up to the 2010s were kind of leaning that way to an extent, but the 2010s Anathema really were a band that did a lot with melancholy textures and dynamics with sort of 1 or 2 notes you can sort of repeat and build, and just the climaxes and the goosebumps are so emotional. I mean, I go sort of We're Here Because We're Here is my favorite, but Weather System's damn close. That's the most popular among those records, of course. Distant Satellites and The Optimist I enjoy both. Not quite. I think The Optimist is the worst of all those records. Plus they had that Falling Deeper, whatever it's called, or Falling Further. Falling Deeper I think is, which was a remix, which was nice too, but again that was old music remix. But anyway, remix or rearranged, I believe. Anyway, I haven't listened to it in ages. But Anathema, just on the strength of those 4 records, belong on this list. At number 23. Number 22, the strength of really 2 records and change. Fair to Midland. Fables from the Mayfly is a masterpiece. Interfund to Stifle is also pretty much a masterpiece, even though they have a lot of the same songs done in some different ways. Some different songs that are all really good as well. The 1 EP, the Drawn and Quarter EP, is really good. They were an amazing live band I saw like 12 times. Darrow, the singer, hangs from the ceiling. They just, absolutely just destroy you live. And of course, Arrows and Anchors, the follow-up, which a lot of the songs are really good. Seeing them live, the production is hit and miss on that record, unfortunately, but the songwriting is quite strong. Songs like Musical Chairs and Uh-Oh and Ricky Tikki Tavi, among others. A lot of cool guitar textures and stuff on that record as well. Even the debut album has a little bit of charm, although it's really a different band. But on the strength of the live performances I saw from them and the couple records that I do really enjoy, they belong this high at 22. And the influence they had, actually, to be honest, they had a fair amount of influence, even though they only had very little. They were kind of getting momentum for like 4 to 5 years, really. So they found a lot of people's influence. Anyway, number 21, just on the strength really of 1 record, but then you add the Gloomcatcher work and Falling Up, Jesse Roborti's work in basically in the, well, I guess you would say in the 2000s and the 2010s, but mostly the 2010s. River Empire's album is a masterpiece. It's a double album, classical bluegrass, progressive rock with a lot of banjo and string sections and stuff like that. Then you have the Gloomcatcher, which is, not quite as orchestrated, but still very emotional songwriting, conceptual as well. Jesse Roborti, some of his best vocal lines are on that album. And those albums, they have 1 full length. They have like 2 or 3 EPs, and then you have Falling Up, which varies. Some of the albums they've released I really like. So I mean, you kind of include them all in together. The work of Jesse Roborti, and it belongs this high. A lot of his work is very progressive in that sense. So anyway, now we're in the top 20. Small League Sink Ships. Yeah, I mean, their debut album aside, which I've only listened to a few times, I own it. It's decent. It's more like sort of punkish at points, post-hardcore. But their last 2 full lengths and their last EP are just amazing. Small League Sink Ships. I love both those records. Face Yourself and Remove Your Sandals. A totally emotional record. It flows perfectly. And Golden Calf and then the Polaroid People EP. So I'm really looking forward to their new record. It's gonna probably come out in 2023. So anyway, number 20, Mulligan Ships, post math rock band, progressive post math rock band from Portland, Oregon. Number 20. Number 19, Self. I've gone on about Self, Matt Mahaffey, and his, he's very prolific, and he's got a ton of amazing songs. Album-wise, I had a few records on that list, from Gizmogery, of course, probably his most well-known record, to Ornament and Crime, and Ornament and Crime, those two especially, and Breakfast with Girls especially, but the last EP I absolutely adore, Super Fake Nice. So, but there's like 10 albums, 10 releases, and there's like over 100 songs. Self is he's amazing. He does almost everything on the record. So, but yeah, we may be getting new Self an album, maybe 2023 or sometime in the next few years. It's been many years. That Super Fake Nice EP, the last thing he released, last non-single he released, came out in 2014, so it's been almost 9 years. But when it does, I can't wait. The guy is just a genius, Matt Mahaffey. Anyway, Foals, number 18. I've talked about them, how at one point I kind of thought their catalog is flawless. In some ways it kind of is, because I'm really now liking it's called Life Is Yours, the new album, despite the loss of their keyboard player. Total Life Forever is number 1, but oh man, I absolutely adore the energy on Antidote, their debut album, and then the records that have come since. All That Is Lost, the two records that came out in 2019 or 2019, and then both What Went Down and Play With Fire. Play With Fire, Holy Fire rather. I'm thinking of Rain and Kindle. Holy Fire. All those records have several tracks that are really good, and I don't find any songs I don't like on many of them, really. And they're an unbelievably good live band, so in some ways they almost deserve to be a little bit higher than this. But coming back on the new record, I think they're kind of in place as one of the top 5 most consistent bands of the last decade and change, of the last 20 years even. So anyway, Foals. The only thing I'll say is that, Total Life Forever is their kind of best record in my mind. They don't have like a sort of highly statement, influential record that has reached that many more people. They've gotten popular, but they don't actually have like a landmark record. Like, we're gonna talk 50 years from now, will Total Life Forever be in the canon? It might be, but I don't know. That's the only thing. Maybe they have yet to make it. But they've made so many really good records, and that record is by far my favorite still. The Spanish Sahara song is unbelievably good. That might be in 50 years from now in the canon. So another band whose their recent stuff has been really consistent, Cloud Cult. Metamorphosis, the album that came out in this past year, I like. I'm not liking it quite as much as some of the recent records, but I'd still put it on par with some of the recent records. Really, I've said from the Meaning of 8 on, they're been very consistent. Light Chasers and The Seeker being my top 2. Chamber rock of a sort from my hometown, of course. Conceptual in a lot of ways. And the stuff that came before The Meaning of 8, I do enjoy many songs here and there, including off the debut album, Who Killed Puck. The opening song that talks about I Found God. I forget what the name of it is. It's like the first song. But yeah, Cloud Cult I've grown to love, even though there's a lot of bands I love from Minnesota and my home state. I can't deny that they're still my favorite band from here. Along with Prince, I guess I'd probably put them as the best music that ever came out of Minnesota. Sorry, Bob Dylan. But anyway, Cloud Cult, number 17. Number 16, Pure Reason Revolution, on the strength especially of the Dark Third, their debut album, which is a classic. And then you have the records that have come since have all been good. I'd probably put Eupnia maybe as second. I really enjoy that, especially the title track. But Amor Vincent Omnia, Hammer and Anvil have a lot of really good songs. And the new album, Above Cyrus. I'm not liking it as much because it's a little more heavy driven and there's less Chloe vocals, but I still like it enough that, they're really a band that hasn't released a bad record, which is good. And now they have 5 albums, believe it or not. It doesn't seem like it. Pure Reason Revolution, number 16. Number 15, Pepe Deluxe. Queen of the Wave is a statement record that is a landmark record to me. Pop opera, perfect pop opera. retro sounding, Dick Dale driven, psychedelic, you name it. The last record that came out last year in 2021, I like a lot. Phantom Cabinet. The two records that came before Queen of the Wave are also very enjoyable. Spare Time Machine and I'm forgetting the other one. Anyway, the first record I've listened to sparingly, and it's more drum and bass than anything else. I still have yet to spend a full time. I remember listening to part of it one day after talking about them on YouTube and everything. So, but anyway, Pepe Deluxe, yeah, they're definitely 15. Considering they have maybe the second best album of the last decade. They maybe are a little bit low, but I love them anyway. Number 14, Kiss Kiss / Vuvuzela / Josh Banash / Oldster. Basically Josh Banash's work over the last 15 years. The two proper full-length albums from Kiss Kiss are really good. And the Vuvuzela record, Hollow Choir, is also just amazing. It's dreamy, waltzy prog, is little moments you just enjoy. I just love what Josh does when he does prog. Really, the artwork, of course, and their symbols a little. I don't call it graphic, but it's kind of a little disturbing. Slightly disturbing, I suppose you could say. But anyway, yeah, I mean those two records are terrific. The EP is actually pretty damn good too, the debut EP, but. The Meek Shall Inherits What's Left and Reality versus the Optimist. Enjoy both of them a ton. They cram everything in this kitchen sink. They're a little bit like Cardiacs or Major Parkinson to an extent. They have a ton of ideas that influenced by King Crimson by a lot of other bands. They feature violin, but it's not incongruous. Everything seems to still work pretty well with the songs. And Josh Banash's voice, I've grown to like more and more. Although he has a humor and a sarcastic tone to it. It's almost like tongue-in-cheek kind of stuff at points. A little bit of Zappa influence, I think. And there's definitely a little bit of a punk element with her music, too, which I don't mind. He has a little bit of screaming, but it doesn't doesn't kill it. Doesn't overstay its welcome. A related band, just above them is Three, who have, 5 full lengths, I believe? I did the video on them. Their last 3 albums, especially proper albums, The Ghost You Gave to Me, The End Has Begun, and Wake Pig, especially those 3. But some of their catchiest songs are on the debut album, Paint by Number, and then of course the live album. I can't remember the name of it now. That in some ways is my favorite record of theirs. Why am I not remembering? I just listened to was it Amazed Disgrace from it the other day. Anyway, Three, they're a terrific live band. I'd say actually they're a better live band than they are a studio band, believe it or not. But the studio albums they've done that are really good are amazing. The only kind of slightly weak record I kind of find is Summer Camp Nightmare. I mean, it's okay, but it's just the other records all have more standout tracks. And I wouldn't be surprised if Joey Eppard felt the same way about it. But anyway, I can't remember the name of that live album, but whatever. I'll remember after I upload the video. Number 13, Three. Number 12, and also on the strength of being live. In fact, if I was rating live bands, they would be much higher than this, probably. Dirt Poor Robins, pretty much maybe one of the, if not the most consistent band going right now. Because you add in the newest released Queen of the Night, they have that. They have Dead Horse, the Dead Horse series of EP's Dead Horse, and the Ravenlock series. They've released 3 successful epic concept records, and they're doing another one next with films. And their first 2 records are pretty damn good too. Last Days of Leviathan and The Cage. They're retro vaudevillian chamber art rock, using a lot of strings and the male-female vocals. Kate's a great singer, Kate DeGrade. The retro element, they've taken a little bit of what the Deer Hunter have done with retro, that's the early Deer Hunter, and done it more, they've emphasized it more successfully. The thing is, they came around, they basically started doing music around the same time, or their first release was the same year of the debut album from the second album. But I mean, they're basically contemporaries. It's a coincidence, but irregardless, and I've never seen them live, but they're studio wizard. Neil's a studio wizard, and they've put out so many really good songs that I just love. that they go number 12 on this list. Who knows what the next record they could go up further? I wouldn't be surprised. Porcupine Tree / Steven Wilson. Yeah, I mean, you combine Steven Wilson's solo career with the best Porcupine Tree records, and it's hard to argue how far, how they are. But people would say they probably belong higher. They may be the most, besides the Mars Volta, probably the most influential band in this style of music, actually. My favorites being Lightbulb Sun and Deadwing and In Absentia. Those are my 3 go-tos. I like some of the sort of earlier space rock Porcupine Tree quite a bit. I've said my piece about Fear of a Blank Planet, but that aside, The Incident is decent, has some moments, even though Time Flies is basically a copy in a lot of ways of Pink Floyd's Dogs. But the new album Closure Continuation is good, especially the bonus tracks included. And then his solo career, he's had a handful of records that I really like. I don't know if I like any of them as much as Lightbulb Sun, but you between To the Bone, The Raven That Refuses to Sing, and Hand Cannot Erase, those 3 especially. I like Insurgentes some here and there. It's a little darker. And Grace for Drowning, I probably need to go back to. I mean, other people love that record. I don't love it. I just kind of think it's there. It has its moments. I think some of the pieces actually work better live, but so he's got a pretty decent, pretty good solo career. If you add that onto Porcupine Tree, maybe it belong a little higher. I don't know. Anyway. Number 10, Mute Math. As I went over in that video, what was it, 2021? They have a really consistent catalog. And plus, they are one of not my favorite live bands. I saw them 5 or 6 times every show. I got floored by them. The sort of drum jams and crowd surfing that Paul does, and they were just unbelievable. I don't know if we're ever going to get any music from them again. But they had the only record is that album Vitals, but I don't mind it. It's not as good as some of the other records, but man, Odd Soul and Play Dead and the self-title are just so good. And then I would put Armistice sometimes in some ways as good as all those records. The self-title, the debut EP Reset is really good, and they have that last EP, Voice of the Silence. They have a really consistent catalog. And so, and then just you add the live factor, and again, they go up. It could go up even higher. Number 10, Mute Math. Number 9, Mew. There's something really special about Mew when they're really good. Kites and Frengers, especially those 2 records. No More Stories. That 3-album run really. I love Plus Minus in a lot of ways. The last album, Visuals, is decent. It's not in the same category as those other records, even as Plus Minus. I'd probably put it about alongside the first 2. I mean, I'll have to do a ranking and stuff, those first 2 records, which have their moments. King Christian's on the second album, Half the World's Watching. I love that song. Anyway, Mew, number 9, unbelievably dreamy, special band in a lot of ways. Some people find Mew to be very religious, like their music is religion to them. Anyway, number 8, the Rain and Kindle / Kindle. I'm on their Patreon. I love the Rain and Kindle. Haven't put out a bad record. The sort of progressive jazzy pop, the unbelievable drumming, the great vocals from Joey, the way he enunciated some of the vocal lines, the way they're using trumpet and piano, especially in the debut album Rhythm, Chord, and Melody. They're a special band, and the other thing that's interesting about them is I hardly ever find anyone who doesn't like them when they check them out. They've found to be appealing to everyone that checks them out, so that they have that on a lot of the other bands. A lot of people don't like. There's something about they don't like about them, but the Rain and Kindle is an exception from my experience at least. Anyway, and they probably are going to put out a new album next year, sometime next. It might be called Wither and Bloom, but I've heard, give them on the Patreon, I've heard a lot of the new songs. So anyway, number 8, the Rain and Kindle. Number 7, Ben Sinister, like Mute Math, largely on the strength of their discography, the consistency of their discography. Stories of Brothers, Tales of Lovers is my number 1 record from them. It's a perfect record, but Through the Broken City is awesome. Small Fame, I love the combination of prog and pop on that record. Animals has a lot of their really best songs, energetic songs. Plus, they have all those EPs. The last album is probably their weakest. It's still a good record. It has that song Shannon, and the last album, which I'm blanking on the name of right now, but and I mean the first album, which technically came out on their name, which was an instrumental jazz fusion album, I guess you could in the can you could put it on. It's not actually not bad. It's just not. It's like a completely different band. That came out in 2000, the Warpaint, but 2000 or 2002, I think. Anyway, but Ben Sinister, yeah, I have a total soft spot. All those EPs, Spring Romance, the self-titled EP, which is probably the best of all the EPs. It has their best song probably on it, and Time Breaks Down. So, yeah, Ben Sinister, number 7. Number 6, Caddisfly. I mean, they only have whatever they had. They had an EP which had the song Games and then 4 songs from the Set Sail to Prayer album. But then they had why is that watermarked? That's interesting. I think it is. But Set Sail to Prairie and Horses Galloping on Sailboats are both just unbelievably epic records that are just masterpieces. Of course, Set Sail to Prairie especially. And By Your Intention is a really good record. It's long. It's a little more raw. And the record that came before, Did You Know We Can Fly? It has one of their best songs on it, that epic with the tablas of the djembe. It has a couple songs they would play live also. Not Shanghai Surprise. Midnight in Shanghai, I think it is. Yeah, I mean, their first EP is more raw. The style isn't very progressive. It's more like just pure post-hardcore. But Caddisfly grew and matured and evolved unbelievably well. Sad that was it. I mean, they had the Water and Bodies. If you include the Water and Body stuff, I don't know if they go up or down. But those records that were so good are just special records to me, and so that's why they go this high. Number 5, I've gone on about them ad nauseum. Of course, they had the number 1 record in the style, the Blood Moon record, Apes and Androids / Cloudflones, Paul. I include the Majesty stuff, the jams that Brian Jacobs did that are really good too, even though it seems like it's just him and a computer and a keyboard and singing, of course. But I love when this sort of experimental art rock with electronics with vocals like Queen and a lot of other things. It just works so well, and they're one of the most unique sounding bands. They're a sponge of styles that just knew how to write songs. Brian and David Tobias especially. They call Florence Poe the EP. I love the debut album, the only album. These are the plans, but the EP, I think they surpassed it with The Strange Situation. It's so good. Anyway, number 5, Apes and Androids. Number 4, Ocean Size. And you include Vinard's solo career in British theater, kind of like the Stephen Wilson Porcupine Tree thing. Yeah, I mean, it's the best Ocean Size albums are just unbelievably good. Frames and Everyone in Position. And I love FRS almost as much. And that the EP, the Music for Nurses EP especially. They had, of course, the other EP. They had a few different EPs actually, but not Minor Canon. That's the name of a band. The EP came out in 2009. But then you include Vinard's solo career and the British theater stuff, and it's just a large body of really cool, creative, heavy, layered, psychedelic, pop rock, whatever you want to call it. Including the Demon Joke, especially the Demon Joke, and the last record he released, Vinard, was really good too. And To Cure Blizzard, I think I was going to be greater than it was, but I still enjoy a lot of it. There's something about the textures he uses that Mike Vinard has used with his music, with his guitar parts, and some of the other, just he's a knack for writing sort of contrasting, almost schizophrenic styles that work. It's like the whole Cardiacs thing done really well. So, number 4. Number 3, Hours, and I'll add the live element because I've seen them live like 8 times. And Jimmy Necco. But, Star Lullabies is an album I've listened to so many times. I have that almost memorized in some ways. And the Mercy record, of course. And then, the records that have come since, that trilogy of records, all have a lot of good songs on them. They're not as good. And I'd also add Precious, too. Precious, kind of was in between those two unbelievably good records, has a lot of great songs and great staple songs. So Hours, number 3. Number 2, Dredge, a band that love live and love in some ways almost better in the studio. The first 4 records, I mean, I know people have their issues with the reservations with the Chuckles album. I like it, but those first 4 records are a step up, of course. El Cielo is just a work of art. Catch Without Arms is unbelievably catchy. and addictive, and the Pariah record, which is kind of best of both, or it's like combining both styles really well. And again, their leitmotif I enjoy quite a lot too, even though it's more raw. And it flows really well, and it's a cool concept. So anyway, number one, no surprise, or not very much surprise, the Deer Hunter, the whole Act series, which every one of them is great. They vary in sort of my feeling on each one of them, but Act 2 still be my favorite. Act 1, I have a soft spot for it. It's very nostalgic. Act 4 has some of the best songs, admittedly, and some people's take is the best. Then, of course, there's the Act 5, of course, but there's also the Color Spectrum and even Migrant, and now we have Anathema. I mean, they're a band that's incredibly consistent, and they, like I said, I think they're the first band to come along that have had a prolific career, a catalog that rivals the likes of like a Rush. I would put Marillion maybe in that category, but the problem is there's a few Marillion records that really big step downs that I think the Deer Hunter actually trumps them, beats them a little bit in consistency. Kevin, but even Kevin has Caviar, and Caviar is not a record that I loved that much. So the Deer Hunter, really, the only band that I can think of that really rivals them is Rush in terms of album to album to album to album to album, where there's a certain distinct level. Anathema I'm liking more, though I still don't think I feel like I enjoyed as much as any of the Axe records. But the more, it's unbelievably good how good the Deer Hunter's catalog. Even if you throw in the Receiving End of Siren stuff, you put just Casey Crescenzo, and More on Attrition is one thing I don't listen to very much, but the Trios records, the one Trios record he's on is unbelievable too. So I mean, to his resume, he has whatever it is, 6, 7, 8 records that are just fantastic. That is in the category of a Rush when you take the string from like Caress of Steel all the way to Presto, where every record is just unbelievably good and consistent. It's an unbelievable run, and we'll see if Casey and the band keeps it up. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. Maybe part of it is I'm a fanboy and I'm drinking the Kool-Aid to an extent, but the Deer Hunter are a special band to myself and to many others. Although I'll admit that I think there's a lot of others that probably appreciate them more than I do even now. But I'm a fanboy. I'm a lifetime member. I don't see that change anytime soon. I guess we'll see where he goes with the whole Indigo Child, the Indigo World, Into My World concept, and if it matches or even surpasses the Axe, I don't know. But or if he starts doing other concepts or other kinds of albums, I don't know. Knowing Casey, he doesn't want to limit himself. So anyway, that's the list of modern progressive rock artist lists. It's about the same length as the top 10, but it's a lot to get through. And let me just quickly, I'll just kind of lightning round go through all the honorable mentions that a lot of these names were on here. You go Typhoon, Eldred, Neverending White Lights, Jazz Kamikaze, Gospel, Hotel the Laughing Tree, Muse, Ramona Falls, Leto and Wright, Bruce Peninsula, Decemberist, Miracles of Modern Science, Esperanza Spalding, 22, Blackfield, which you could have put Blackfield, I suppose, with Stephen Wilson and Porcupine Tree, Godspeed You Black Emperor, Grimace, Vanavi, Woven, Biffy Clyro, Clint 1918, Formal Horse, Dream Electric Sleep, The New Pornographers, Radical Face / Clone / Electric Plans, which is Ben Cooper's bands, Annuals, Tokyo Gian / Sheena Ringo, Sufjan Stevens, Nordic Giants, Murder by Death, Carnival, Sigur Rós, The Velveteen, Timbre, Margot and the Norcan So-and-So's, Brooke Wagner, The Apples and Stereos, Stiletto Formal, Block Party, Manson, Minus the Bear, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Wolf Parade, Timmy Sean / Servadios / Loser, Timmy Sean work, Gatherer, Distrails, Moron Police, EDBC Shank, Aerogrom, Russian Circles, Battles, and the Claypool and Delirium. Of course, there's a lot of bands and artists that I didn't include in here, even in that, when I was doing the whole Pub Meeple ranking and stuff like that. But that's an epic long list, just like the albums list, but I just tried to do it all in one. It would take way too long to do, 13 or 5 videos for this, so. But please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Again, apologies for how long a video this was, but, it's a convenience thing. But thank you for watching. Again, please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. We'll see you next time.